Hey, everybody, welcome back. Les Luthor is here with me. This is, I think, now the fourth installment of the Double X, Double Cross, Hidden Hand, British Empire, whatever show. Welcome back, my friend. You've been busy. I can't wait to catch up with you. How you doing?
I'm doing good, Emily. Always happy and excited to chat to you. Yeah, a lot's gone down, I guess, or it hasn't gone down. I don't know. Depends on where you look at it, right? But yeah, no, I'm good. I'm good. How are you? How are you? How's things?
I think I'm good. It just feels so crazy right now, right? Things are very busy. Like my other job had been sort of on slow motion, like slow production for a couple of months. And now it's like ramping back up, but like everything happening at the same time. And then information coming at me fast and furious. And like, you know, uh, it just feels like challenging right now. And I don't want to, you know how some of the information we play with, it's like laugh at it, whatever, it's funny, say crazy shit, doesn't matter if it's right or wrong. But then there's like a few topics that are really more the heart of the matter that like, are more challenging to understand, that like I feel it's more important to try and get it right, to try and understand what it is I'm really looking at. And I've been less
Yeah.
distracted with nonsense and more focused on those lately. And that takes like a lot of brain power, right? But
Hmm.
even with some of these topics that are like more, that these are the things that they really don't want people spending time looking at and thinking about, which is why they produce all of the chicken feed, right? But even within these more meaningful topics, right, that get to the heart of the matter, there's like a different kind of chicken feed there, because within these, they want you to believe that these topics are so complex that you're just too stupid to understand. So you'll go back to the chicken feed that you do understand, right? And I don't really think they are that complicated. I don't think that they're like necessarily totally uncomplicated, but now the process is like trying to find that right filter. So it's like, okay, this is actually nonsense designed to distract and confuse. This actually is an important concept that like understanding what it means matters, right? So it's like a different kind of sifting and filtration that still involves chicken feed, but it's just a little bit different type of chicken feed.
Yeah.
I'm all of these things that we're taught are really complex matters. Things like genetic engineering, nuclear physics, all of that kind of stuff. Like, while they're more complex than some of the things we look at as far as like propaganda and whatnot, they're not really as complex as they want you to believe they are, right? They really aren't. And so it's just that using discernment to decide like which things are the true complicated things and which things are the false complicated things, right? It's just like a further refinement of this process. So anywho, so that's what I've been
But
doing. Go ahead.
I just jump on that. Like, living in the modern day and age that we do with AI and things like chat, whatever the fuck is called, chat GBT, which has been around for years. It's not new. It's not hard for them to pump out chicken feed to surround a nugget of truth. It's so
Absolutely.
easy. It's merely AI is probably doing it defensively. Because something that's kind of like you're saying is precious and true, and there's probably some value to it. It will be surrounded by, just a mountain of chicken feed. And pretty much you got yourself like a needle in a haystack situation. And to tie it into World War II, that's the whole point of Operation Bodyguard in general. The fictional character of Churchill said, any bit of truth should be surrounded by an army of bodyguard of lies. And that's kind of what you're talking about, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, right. So I've been doing that, and I think I'm starting to understand it. Like, right, if like any salient idea can be explained fairly succinctly, at least to the point where you can go, okay, I understand that, and part of the understanding is that I need more information, right? But if to like when someone is just trying to lay out an idea, takes them an extensive amount of time to do it, there's something wrong. And like the way I would compare this, I don't know how it works in England, but here, like when the Congress gets together and they pass bills, like some of them are hundreds and thousands of pages, and the bill might be titled something like Amber Alert, right? Which was the act that was passed to have like a federal warning system if a child goes missing. But like when you would go down and read all of the bill, there would be things connected to it that have nothing to do with it, like Stop the Raves Act and all that were in the bill, right? And my thought about things is like, if something is going before Congress, it should be able to be explained in one page, and it should be about one thing only, right? And the same goes, in my opinion, for like, if you're talking about things that are seriously like laws of nature in terms of how physics works or how human genetics works or whatever, like the statement should be able to be simple so that people understand what they're dealing with. And then they can go, okay, there's some complex ideas embedded within them that I need to go research. But if like your opening statement is 4,000 pages of gobbledygook designed to keep somebody from ever even believing they could understand, right? I'm learning to how to like discard that. And then, within more succinct statements, find areas, like a sentence or two here, a word or two there that maybe I need to expand my understanding of, right? But you wouldn't believe the amount of like nuclear chicken feed there.
Radioactive chicken feed.
Totally, right? Yeah. So, but I like that statement about Operation Bodyguard. I wasn't familiar with that particular operation or that. I mean, I'm familiar with the idea of surrounding it with a lot of nonsense, but I hadn't heard it attributed to Churchill and Operation Bodyguard before. So that's interesting.
Yeah. So that's everything, isn't it? Like any bit of truth is surrounded by chicken feed or a bodyguard of lies to throw you off.
Yep. So let's do this. You have been a very busy man. So let's go through some of what you've been doing. And then after we've done that, we can kind of return to an idea that like this always happens. As soon as we're done recording the show, something meaningful happens. And that happened last time. And so we want to talk a little bit about the Butlerian Jihad. But let's start with what you've been up to recently. I'm going to scoot this show out a little bit more quickly. I have a lot of shows in the can, but because you did the most extensive coverage of the Paris scenario, and I haven't really been paying too much attention to it other than through your thread. I think you've added to it since the last time I looked at it. But let's kind of talk about what happened, why you decided to go, what you saw, what your sort of wrap up is on all of that. Let's start there, and then we'll move to a few of the other things on the list.
Should we try screen share? Or I'll talk about it, right? So
I'll talk about it first. Do you want me to go to that thread, or do you have something different you want to screen share? I'm giving you screen share, by the way.
So I've never done. You're dealing. Remember, Emily, you're dealing with a caveman here. It doesn't do this kind of shit. So what do I go on?
Are you going to share the thread?
No, not the thread. I've got. I can probably. I'll just talk about it, Emily. So,
okay, then we'll decide if we want to do a screen share, and I'll help you. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. So back around the end of February, actually the 1-year anniversary of the Ukraine war, a load of footage started coming through the internet, or I should say my internet, not the internet. The internet was designed for me. And it was British troops, military troops running around like areas of France, like little villages in France. And there's like bemused civilians walking around like with cups of coffee or with their shopping, or with their kids. And these British troops are doing like a fake mock fighting in the middle of the streets.
When
so I had a look in end of, at the around February 22nd, February 25th
of this year. Okay.
Yeah. Recently. And it's quite surreal footage. There's just literally civilians like, what the fuck is going on here? As these British troops are like running around, like firing off dud rounds and stuff, throwing smoke grenades in the middle of a street, like a little village. Anyway, I started looking into it. There's an exercise going on in France now called Orion 23. And it's a massive French-led NATO exercise with around 20,000 troops involved from NATO. And I was really interested in that because this is my kind of thing. I was like, wow, man, I might go over to France and go check it out. You know, troops running around the street. This is gold for me. This is like my kind of ideal situation. Anyway, the riots in France started kicking off, right? And I was like thinking, oh, and I was looking at the clips of the rioting in France, and there was something very off about it, something very staged and engineered about it. Like the fighting looked very kind of WWE, you know, it was very kind of rehearsed, and you could clearly see same situation, bemused members of the public like shocked, like what the fuck is going on here? As like a flash mob would have like a 10-second fight and then they just disappear. And I just started putting the connections together. And I was like, oh my god, this is some kind of Operation Gladio type thing. This exercise Orion is cover for the protests, and these protests are not quite as genuine as they look, in my opinion. So then I went over to Paris and had a look for myself. I went on the 23rd of the 3rd, 2023, which is like the biggest demonstration protest day of all. I went and saw what's happening, and yeah, it was like a sealed off movie set. I couldn't go on, and that's where my thread starts. But yeah, this exercise Orion, and obviously then we can get into the whole thing of Tennant, and it basically was in front of the Opera House, and it was just very surreal. You know, there was a lot of Inception like vibes to my time there and stuff. So yeah, exercise Orion is going on right now. Exercise Orion goes on until middle of May. So, you know, what is Orion? I mean, probably a question for someone like Nish or Robert Phoenix. What does Orion mean, really? I've got a feeling that they are kind of like building the backstory to a fake World War III. If I cut to the chase, I reckon if we fast forwarded to about 50 years from now, when we've all got dementia and we can't remember, they're going to write this in the history books as a real event, as they were really, fighting, I don't know, whatever the story is going to be, pushing Russian troops out of France. Because this Orion 23, yeah, it's a fictitious battle where they're fighting an imaginary militia. They're pushing them out of the country. And it involves like a fictional country, fictional units, classic stuff that I've been talking about for ages, So I'm going to leave it there, Emily, if you've got any questions, and I might screen share what I'm talking about.
Okay, so quickly. So, all right. So Orion 23 is I showed the, let's just bring it back one more time. I showed what the exercise, the description, just the simple, bullshit description here. It's from the Royal Air Force. So that's a UK thing. First run in 2021, Orion 20. So this is the second time they're doing it, at least the second time. Orion 23 is a major exercise for France's armed forces and provides the perfect opportunity for multinational combined arms training in a scenario developed by NATO that exercises all the way from planning to high-end war fighting. Okay, and so and there are some videos here of it, but it's obviously involves the hidden hand going into France, right? And why doesn't France just do their own exercise with their own military? What does the British troops have to do with it? But then we see it's a NATO thing, and this gets into where you're starting to look at Gladio stuff for sure, right? And for people who aren't familiar with Gladio, there's a lot of work has been done on it. Unfortunately, some of the good work that was done on it was then the person who did that good work went off the deep end later, and so probably
Who was that? If you don't mind me asking?
Sybil Edmonds.
Okay.
Like, she introduced the idea of Gladio B, right, which was like a sort of a different iteration of it, which I think was right. But then at a certain point, like, everything became Gladio B, right? Just like, and she got into she went off the deep end a couple of years ago, and it's hard to figure out exactly what happened, whether it was just like her own internal break or something else, or if she was a plan. Who the fuck knows, right? But she had made her name as being a whistleblower on some things around 9/11, right? And then went off to go do other independent research and whatnot. And one of the people who really brought her research forward, as far as like the Gladio stuff, was James Corbett. And at a certain point, he ended up having to like disown or disattach from her because she had gone so far off the reservation in terms of you know, her assessment of a lot of things. So, but there was definitely some stuff in there that was valid. People who've done a lot of really good work on the past on Gladio are James Corbett, Jack Blood, plenty of other researchers. Those are just two that I remember hearing a lot on their podcasts, like back 10 or 15 years ago when I was really trying to understand Gladio, right? But what Gladio generally is like stay behind troops, right? That are like, you know, it's when a conflict or an operation is essentially over, at least as it's been announced to a public, leaving a small contingency of undercover or, you know, assets in a location in order to be able to create, you know, create chaos if they decide that that's what they want to do.
Yeah, they're going to
Right.
lead the resistance. They're going to lead the
Yes.
resistance army against the Soviet
Yes.
Soviet takeover. But years later, it came out from like an Italian politician that actually
Yes.
they were far from doing that. They were actually staging false flags everywhere.
Correct.
To further, you know, push NATO and stuff. So I'll just let everyone know when I say Operation Gladio, I'm using that more as a pop culture reference as an actual instead of actual Gladio. I think the double cross and all of that are well above Gladio and puppeteering Gladio. So
correct, but Gladio is this idea that you have militarized forces hidden amongst the general public in pockets of supposed action or resistance or whatever to sow chaos that the right will call of the left will call of the right, blah, 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 right? That is just like confusing and creates a lot of chicken feed.
yeah.
So it's to sow confusion generally, right?
Yeah. So the thing is, Emily, is that I'll say my internet feed, my Twitter feed, I was getting overloaded with this with chicken feed from the alternative media, funny enough, from the guys that are supposed to be aware, basically making out that Paris was on fire, it was besieged, that the masses were about to go and drag Macron out of the presidential palace. Pure nonsense, right? Well, I knew it was going to be nonsense from the start. So I just wanted to go and see how bad it was. And guess what? It was not that bad. And a lot of the alt media truther types obviously jumped on me and claimed that I was, you know, derailing a genuine movement. And I was like, listen, this is not a, you know, it's not. But yet again, the alt media are problematic. They're almost just as bad as the mainstream media in that they are the opposite cross to the double cross, right?
At this point, I'd agree with you. I'd say they're worse.
Worse. They fall for it every time. They run their own propaganda campaigns and they don't understand that they're doing it.
I just am at the point where like I don't know that there's any such thing as a genuine movement. And even if they were, like, I go back to the words of Dr. Judy Wood, right, who is a complex personality sometimes, but the truth does not need a movement. A movement is something that is needed to convince people of something, right? And so, like, you know, I'm suspicious of movements and leaders, period. Right? Like, because all of that implies like religious shit for me. And that's not my jam. Right.
Wait.
So I wanted to look quickly at the metaphysical meaning of Orion here because you asked about that. Right.
Oh, yeah.
Looking at the metaphysics, and this is from a Christian website, but they love the biblical play, right? So Orion, blooming, beautiful, strong, a mighty hunter, virtuous, lusty, loin, inward, strength, confidence, hope, impiety, and here's the favorite part: folly, foolishness. Folly and foolishness is probably what we're more dealing with here. Right. Yeah. And then a group of stars, a brilliant constellation on the equator, pictured as a great hunter or a huge giant who had warred against God and had been bound with chains to the firmament of heaven. The meta description is the seeming strength, not the real strength, the seeming strength and desirability of animal forces in man. and the apparent bondage of the individual to these forces. Man has a very dim comprehension that back of even his apparently animal forces and propensities that seem to bind him so tightly to the flesh, there is something that is divine. There is some wonderful truth. Yet like the stars that represent truths apparently far beyond man's present conception, his inner forces and powers with their origin and possibilities are just beginning to be faintly understood by him. All right, I'm going to say in this sense, we're dealing with the folly and foolishness, but that, just calling something Orion, because you have to fool the troops that are taking part of it too. Right? So they'll subscribe to that iteration, and the people running the whole show understand that like we're playing with folly and foolishness here. Okay, so I think what I'm picking up that you're laying down here is that there were these exercises, and it looks like those exercises happen triennially, so every 2 years or 3rd year or something like that, right? Or maybe it's 3 times a year. I'm not sure what the word actually.
This is the first time they've ever done it on French soil for a long time. They don't usually do operate because this is what I'm saying. It's madness, right? This is the whole point of military training grounds overseas, and even the ones that are in home, right? They're sealed off from the public. You have your mock cities. You lay out cones. You say, okay, that's a church, that's a shopping center. That's what the whole point of training. Why have they suddenly taken to doing it on the streets around members of the public? That's what's so surreal, because that's usually a bit of a no-go. It's just not really best practice. And I'd love to show you a few clips, but you get the idea, right? Just troops running down regular streets, and it's just insane. Like,
so 2 things. Let me just jump in here real quick. Okay, so I want to say something about actual Orion 23, and then I'm going to answer the question that you just asked about that, right? So ostensibly, we have an excuse for there to be British troops or joint European troops in France for a period of months. It looks like the exercise stretches over a couple of months. And there is video of them doing this type of exercise, right? But that doesn't mean that they couldn't also be doing something like this in plain clothes, right? Right. So maybe they on their weekend off from their doing the little things in the villages, they come and do this, right? So that's certainly a possibility. They have 3 months of cover for being in that country, and we know what they're doing sometimes, but we don't know what they're doing the rest of the time. So that's that about Orion 23. But as to your question about why are they running through the streets? So they were doing this in the United States several years back. I don't know if you remember, there was like something called Operation Jade Helm. And there was one called this might have been before you were tracking this kind of stuff. There was another one called, I can't remember. It was like such a weird name. I can't think of the next one there was, but it was like this as well, where they were conducting like these exercises or like war game kind of scenarios. And some of them even appeared to be in the text that was released about what they were doing, pointed at the American people, not just pretending it was like for some international, conflict or something like that. But they were exercises, right? And then, okay, so they made it, all the conspiracy theorists were like, man, this one's going to go live and they're really going to do this and blah, blah, blah. And then, of course, the exercise happened. Nothing much happens. But I will say, and I hadn't thought about this before, oftentimes, later that year or maybe the next year, we'd get something like the Ferguson riots or the George Floyd thing or something like that. And maybe that like it's kind of like when a football coach draws up the different plays they're going to do in practice, and they have like have you ever seen like it's different for soccer. I'm thinking of American football, but maybe soccer's like this too. They literally have pages in their books that have like diagrams of plays that look like what an architect's blueprint for a house, almost like this person will go here, this person will go there, da, 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 da. So maybe they game it out with the military, and then, the people that activate it in the city situation as far as protests are people who are working for private contractors or military contractors who understand how to read the plays that were developed in the military, right? Or whatnot. So they practiced it out first with the official government thing in a setting that makes some kind of, but still not really any sense for what they're doing, and then they put people into the protest or into the crowd who are dressed like hooligans, right? But who have been in the military, or so understand how to execute those plays in order to stimulate the other team, and the other team in this case would be the useful idiots in the crowd, to react in the way that the desired goal that they achieve the desired goal.
100. Yes, definitely. I think, like, let's say you put whatever number, 10. Let's say there's 10,000 troops in this exercise. Secretly within that, you'd have like 1,000 of what I call a ghost army, who run around doing all of these gladio type things. And yet again, the actual soldiers don't have a clue. They just think they're just doing their job. And yeah, it's a good way. It's a good cover for the ghost army to get in and do their shenanigans of false flags and setting off fireworks that look like real bombs, and playing the role of the protester, playing the role of the police officer. You don't need to have every single police officer and protester as one of the ghost army. You just need a few in there leading the easily fooled members of the public around, and they're going to be immune from any kind of prosecution. So if I go back to France, let's say a ghost army soldier dressed up as a protester, and let's say he did get arrested, it doesn't matter because he'll be out the next morning. The funny handshake gang will come into the police cell next morning and get him out, and he'll be back in his underground cave and underneath the city of London or whatever. So yeah, we're talking about the same thing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Right. We're talking about the same thing. And then the other thing is to what you were saying about what you saw in your feed. So it's interesting, like the person who I'm not looking at too much stuff anymore. Like I really don't follow a lot of the conspiracy channels anymore or whatever. But the person in my feed who was pushing this idea the most was Russell Brand, right? Which was no surprise to me whatsoever, right? The main people who seem to offer a lot of coverage of foreign supposed protests are people who are kind of asking the question, when are the American people going to get in the streets and do this? Yeah. Right. So they're trying to stimulate, a protest that will then, allow for reasons for clamping down, or will create, a level of chaos that, so they want more January 6th. They want more George Floyd protests, right? And even though we know that those are provocateur as well, you can't provocateur nothing, right? So you need there to be some general feeling amongst the people that something is wrong and we better do something, right? And one of the things about that you hear often people who are of the conspiratorial left or the alternative left say is like when are the people going to do something, right? Like I think that oftentimes, with the exception of a lot of the culture that came around Donald Trump, people on the right are just like, that's not the way they protest. They protest with their vote or with their dollars, which have their own set of issues, right? But street protests have generally been more a thing of the left. So you often see people like Jimmy Dore or Russell Brand and a few others that I can think of, like back in the old conspiracy days, people like Webster Tarpley or whatnot, wanting to know when people are going to get out into the street and stay out in the street until their demands are met and whatever. But, those are the people who are doing this because they understand that, if they're true believers, then that's just the mind control they've been indoctrinated with. But if they're Russell Brand, they're trying to, agitate for that kind of activity that then allows a hidden hand to come in and synthesize that into a scenario that always gives them under more control under the guise of accommodating some request of the protesters.
Yeah. It's meant to inspire it in other countries, because all of the tweets are saying the same sort of thing, like, the people have spoken, the sheep have woken up, and all this kind of bollocks, and it was hinting at France first, and then Australia next, and the USA next. Like, it's going to inspire this kind of nonsense all around the world. And yeah, we spoke about, Russell Brand, who's like the patron saint of fucking baby truthers. He works for the double cross, but like all members of the double cross, he doesn't know it. Like him and Joe Rogan, they don't know they're working for the double cross and falling right into promoting and pushing what they're supposed to. They genuinely think they're saving the world and making a change. And
I think Russell Brand knows it.
Probably, yeah. Yeah, of course.
I see things with him. I see things with him that there's no way. I mean,
you're not that stupid, Russell. Come on.
A person that confused would not be as coherent as he is, right? So yeah, no, I think there's some people that either like know because they've been briefed on it, or they have figured it out and they've decided for some reason that they're okay with it, right? And then there's other people like when I say that I don't know if Joe Rogan knows, that it's not me like making excuses for him. That's me. There's some people that have an arrogance or an ego that, and I don't find Joe to be overly arrogant or overly egotistical, but I do think he is very certain of his inability to be fooled. He thinks that he would know it if someone was mind controlling him. He thinks he would know it if somebody was trying to manipulate him to get him to do something that is on behalf of something other than what he thinks it is. And that sometimes that amount of certainty is a weakness, a soft spot in somebody's armor that can be exploited easily by these systems. So I see him a little bit differently than Russell Brand, right? There's a few different kinds of characters that find themselves in this role. But
see what
he's doing.
See what you just said there about Joe Rogan, that like hubris or whatever you want to call it. That's exactly who if we went back to the World War II scenario, that's exactly who the double cross preyed upon when it came to like foreign spies, because they were the ones that are so up their own arse in their own so that's like what you just described, they are the easiest ones to control because they can't fathom the fact they're getting puppeteered.
Yeah,
they're so egotistical and narcissistic. They can't and they were actually the easiest ones, and that's the reason the British didn't kill them, was because they might send someone of a higher caliber. So they stuck with the Joe Rogan type because they were just so easy, because they is everything you just said. That is a perfect description of the spies that were brought into the double cross that didn't know they were brought into the double cross. This is the important thing.
Yeah,
they were just given like a Truman Show experience. The double cross would just manipulate everything around them. So they would walk into a room at a certain time and be in the right place at the right time. And the egotistical spy, aka Joe Rogan, would think, "Oh, I'm just so great. Look how great I am. I'm the greatest spy ever. Look how great I am. No one's coming to kill me. Money's coming in. I do kettlebells at 4 a.m. in the morning. That's why I'm so great." And it's, it's like, nah, man, it's because you're fooling. Yeah, but anyway, yeah. I'm glad you said all that stuff.
Yeah. So, okay, so let's go back to Paris for a second, right?
Yeah.
So, like, are we talking about that it was an absolute nothing burger, or are we talking about that it was like a child's cheeseburger, right? Or was it a child's cheeseburger that wasn't actually about what people think it was about at all, right? So it was completely nothing. The whole thing was made up out of whole cloth. It was a real thing, but it was a very small real thing. Or it was a real thing, but it was a very small real thing. And that small thing was actually about something different than what people think it was about. Or was it something completely different than all of those?
So the actual National Day of Action was real. There was a massive gathering going down the street, with all their banners and flags and their yellow vests and, vans with speakers and MCs and hype men and all singing songs and shit. That was real. It was huge. I don't know if it was 9 million like the media are claiming, or alt media are claiming. I think that's kind of ridiculous. Maybe 500,000. I don't know. How can I head count?
What was the Day of Action about?
It was a joint everything. Pensions, the rubbish men were on strike, the railway people were on strike.
So it was basically a "we're mad" parade. If there's something you're mad about, come join us.
Yes, that was very real. They marched down the street. I saw all of that. I captured all that. I'm not saying that's fake. That's all real. The numbers are exaggerated. I'm saying the bit at the end where they're making out that they're trying to make out that mass of people suddenly get to the end point and pick up petrol bombs and start fighting with police and burn the city down. That's all nonsense. That's overblown nonsense. It was a flash mob. It's about 10 seconds of violence filmed from about 100 different angles by Gladio photographers that was then flooding the internet, implying that this was a day in, day out thing, hour to hour, when it was like a 10-second bit of action. And
okay, so was the day of action on the same day as the flash mob, or was there? It was the same day. Okay.
Yeah. And you got to remember this has all been organized by the very people they think they're protesting against.
So I'm clear. Is there? Yes, I that is very clear. Right, it's always that. Right, it's always
so people at home, my home, your home, the people not in France that are jumping on this and spreading their own propaganda. They don't understand. You see what I'm saying? They're chicken feeding it themselves. They're gaslighting themselves that this was some kind of revolution, and it wasn't.
Okay, so let me ask you this question, because I looked at a good portion of your feed as when you were there, while you were there. I haven't looked at the updated portions of it, and I never saw anything that looked like 9 million people. So was the day of action the day that you were there, or did you go after the day of action?
No, 23rd was the day of action.
Okay, so you were there, but you went to where you thought the finale would be. And so that was why you weren't recording all the 9 million masses. You settled yourself down at the spot that you decided looked like the stage set to you. And is that my understanding was right?
No. I went to the gathering, which started at a place called Bastille. I followed it. And then it was going so slow that I eventually I walked off to what I thought would be the staging point.
Okay.
Well, I got it wrong. It wasn't a place called Concord. It actually ended up being outside the Opera, which, how in your face is that? But yeah, I was there. It was alt media claiming 9 million people. It wasn't that big. It was a lot of people, but it wasn't 9 million. But yeah, it was just a straight walk down a very big road in central Paris, pre-organized, led by the police, and so on. And I was there, yeah, but I filmed as much as I could. And I just walked ahead because, I wanted to go get a coffee and take a piss and recharge my batteries and stuff like that.
Okay, got it. So, all right. So it's very, very similar to, I'm sure you've seen at this point, the video that Tucker Carlson put out of the police literally leading the QAnon shaman around the Capitol. Yeah. So I don't understand why people don't have questions. If you are doing something that is designed to resist authority and the authority is assisting you into doing it, like, I don't understand where, like, my whole thing is like, I don't want to be around police.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that, like, if there's police around, something that I don't want to be part of is happening one way or the other. And so I leave. I mean, obviously, like, if there's a police activity outside of my apartment, I'll look to see what's going on. And sometimes it's a innocent activity, like somebody's had a car accident and they're just taking the report or whatever. But I still don't like these people who like all gather around. I always feel like going and hanging out by the police is rarely is there like the chance that something great will come of that or whatever.
Yeah.
This idea that like you are resisting the government, but the government is encasing you in your movement through the streets. The whole thing is so stupid, right? Like I can't quite.
It's an event management.
Well,
the government has put on an event for you to attend where you protest them. It's ridiculous. Like, but hey ho.
I also like. What do you think is the like with all of these things, whether it was like Occupy Wall Street here or these things we see going on in Europe or whatever? Why are there always people there? Like, why are there DJs? Why are there fucking drum circles? Why? Like, I'm sorry, but I don't like. I don't understand. Right? It like to me it seems like a rave.
Yeah,
which
This is
also
what,
which also possibly is put on by the police in order to, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. There's a book called Event Management for Dummies, right? And it's, it gives you like how to like set up a festival and stuff, and it's all the same stuff. Do you remember that the famous train station in Poland that I came across? Same thing, certain roads closed off, barriers, um, road management. What I call real human trafficking. They're trafficking humans into a fully immersive stage.
right. It's that is real human traffic.
That's the real human trafficking right there, man. Just closing a few doors, close a few roads, and walking these clowns. I feel bad saying that, right? Because I'm sure a lot of them people genuinely believe they're doing a good thing. But from my perspective, I think the whole idea of protesting is the most degrading thing you can do, because you're essentially begging your masters for change. I think if you want to change the world, you've got to do it, at home or within
Well,
direct action, right?
absolutely. I mean, well, I mean, I think the biggest one is just like, especially like, this is my biggest question to like the people of the left, who generally are more inclined towards protest than the people of the right, right? Generally, I'm not saying 100%. But like, they are mad at the government, but they're always for like sending more money to the government. Like, to me, the only protest that would ever make sense would be a general strike. And I don't now a lot of people think a general strike needs to be accompanied by getting in the street. I disagree. When I say general strike, what I mean is you don't go to work and you don't spend money. Like basically you just bring the entire like flow of the society to a halt, because that's the only thing that the system understands. So, right, like, and if everybody's doing it, they can't go after everybody, right? You can't arrest people for not going to McDonald's. You can't, right, kind of thing, And so generally, like, if everybody stopped, just stayed home with it, just took a few days off and stayed home with their family and brought the system to a standstill, I'm not even sure that I'm not saying I think that's a good idea, but that makes more sense to me than this thing where people gather in the streets, open up plenty of opportunities for encounters with government and law enforcement, bring a whole lot of economic activity to the downtown area, right? Like, think about the amount of money that is spent in those city blocks on those weekends, right? People who generally don't pay for their coffee out are paying for their coffee out. People are paying for hotel rooms. We get overpriced beer, overpriced food, right? People are setting up stands out on the curb to sell water and this and that and the other thing. It actually goes completely against the idea of starving the government out. It's feeding the beast.
Yeah. Definitely. But, I heard about that concept of a general strike years ago, and at the time I thought it sounded quite good. Yeah, you essentially stop participating in the matrix, and they're going to lose so much money that they're going to actually maybe negotiate with you. But now, a few years later, I'm thinking after the scamdemic, they don't give a fuck. They're just printing money anyway. Money doesn't really exist at the top; it's infinite. And I think a big part of the like that thread I showed you, a big part of the scamdemic was to make you. But they basically essentially got people begging to have their jobs back. So they've completely flipped the idea of refusing to participate in the system. They flipped it around to a point where people were taken to the streets to beg for their fake job back. Crazy, man, crazy.
So what you said, so here's the thing that I understand, right? Money is not real. But the movement of money creates energy. It's called currency. The currency isn't about the value of the thing, it's about its movement. And so if nobody is earning money and nobody is spending money, then there's not, like, it's kind of like there's nothing for all the bullshit to piggyback a ride on. Nothing is moving, right? And so that when they just print money, they're like, okay, we're going to print money. We're going to give it to the big banks. The big banks, we'll give a lot to the big banks and a little to the people. The people will go out and spend it right away, and the banks will do whatever they do. But they're counting on that money they give away moving, creating a lot of transactions. Like it's entire. I think the whatever the electrical charge that is generated when you send like a wire transfer, or when you do any of these sort of, you know, transactions in that digital realm around money, like I think it's entirely possible that it creates a certain type of energy that powers certain things, right? So they're looking for that. They don't want things to be static, right? Even think about this, when even like when the lockdown happened in the first couple of weeks, right, when really everybody, including people who are generally suspicious, didn't know what was going on and were kind of, you know, staying home without too much complaint. I mean, some of us were already complaining, right? People were still spending money. People were ordering things on Amazon. They were ordering food from restaurants. They were, you know, going to the market, even if they had to wait in line, and buying things they didn't really need. It didn't really stop economic flow. It just changed the pathways of that flow, right?
Yeah.
So there was no period of stasis. It was just things that used to spread out onto like a lot of pathways were all condensed into a few main pathways, i.e. corporate pathways, as opposed to mom and pop pathways.
Definitely. Yeah.
Okay. Do you want to go through any of the activity that you saw? Like, I have your thread pulled up. Do you want to like pick maybe a couple of the videos that you think are like the most damning or the most easily put on display what you are talking about here in terms of the way the stage set operation is run?
I'm not too bothered. Do you want to do that? I think, I don't know. It's up to you. Yeah, we'll do it if you want. I'm not too bothered. I'm not interested in trying to.
Perfect. You know, okay. No,
yeah.
I don't need to either. We'll just include the threads so people can go look at them for themselves. So the only thing that really surprised you then when you were there was the location of the money shot.
Yeah. Because I done my research, and it usually happens around a place called Concord. That's where apparently the French Revolution happened, where they set up the guillotines and stuff. Traditionally, whenever there's a big thing like this, it usually is Concord, because Concord's like a massive roundabout. It's got the space. But yeah, this time it was the Paris Opera House, which, you know, to this day I'm still like, I'm blown away. Like, it was they're acting in front of an opera house. Like, how in your face is it? But then, you know, when I chat to, you know, now we're chatting, we're taking it to the behind the veil type stuff. The opera house, man, and Tenant and all that kind of stuff. Like, you know, I don't know if you still got Tenant fresh in your head, but opera is a big part of that, right? If we remember the big beginning scene, and it's kind of the ending scene as well. It's, you know, it's all around the opera house. But yeah, I don't know. What's your thoughts, Emily?
Well, first of all, for those people who haven't seen it, and to refresh my mind, let's pull up the opening opera house scene. Let me just get the commercial here. Hold on a second.
Because this is why we chat, Emily, right? We're taking it to the extreme levels of woo woo, right?
Okay, hold on.
If time travelers were going to step in,
right,
do it under the cover of this.
Okay, so let's take a look at this for people who haven't seen it, or for those who need a refresher. Here we go.
We live in a twilight world. We live in a twilight world.
And there are no friends at dusk.
You've been made. This siege is a blind for them to vanish you.
But I established contact.
Bring you in or kill you. Have 2 minutes. Make up your mind. Where's the package?
Code check.
Stay. Візьми його! Що ти робиш? Що ти робиш? Хто ти? Хто ти? No friends at dusk, huh? You'll do. Get him to the rally point. So close. The Ukrainians are expecting the passenger. I've never seen a cancellation like this.
We don't know how old it is, but it's the real deal.
Did you have an out?
Service tunnels in the sewer.
Take this. Take him, take his exit. I don't trust ours anymore. Can you defuse that?
It's centrally synchronized. Are there more?
Covering the tracks.
Taking out the audience.
They're just the cheap seats. Not our mission. Mine now. Walk away. We don't have to kill these people. That wasn't one of us. I'll take Bill. Go, 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 go!
Okay, so that's the Paris Opera House. I saw Tenet like not too long after it first came out, and I'm just going to be straight up honest, and this will be like probably leveling in some ways. I don't understand Christopher Nolan movies. Like, I get that there's something being hinted at that I'm supposed to understand, but I always struggle to hear what the characters are saying because the background noise is so loud. So I have trouble following the dialogue. And movies, I don't really care for movies in general because it's like trying to understand too much all compressed. Like, I really do a much better job at understanding television series where you kind of have time to acclimate yourself to the sort of whatever the theme type of thing is. So I really struggle with Christopher Nolan movies. And when I ask people to explain them to me, I'm never satisfied. I'm not satisfied that they understand them either, even though they claim to. Because if you understand it, you should be able to explain it to me. You are not the average bear. So I'm going to ask you, do you understand the movie and can you explain it to me? I understand the themes that are being played with and the ideas being laid down, but I'm not sure I'm 100% clear on what it is we actually just saw happen. And I could say that about most of the main scenes in the movie. There was a few that were more clear to me.
Yeah, Tenet's a film you've got to watch again and again and again. Every time you watch it, there'll be something new that pops out. on you. But I think Christopher Nolan is obviously some kind of Time Lord who knows how the mechanics of time travel works.
That's clear. Yeah, that's clear. Yes.
So in Tenet, there's the thing about Tenet is there's what in the world of Tenet, there's only one timeline. You can only zip up and down one timeline. There's none of this multiverse stuff. So you can only zip up and down the one timeline. You can't create a new branch. And all of his films roll around time, right? Like, yeah, all of them. So it's worth watching the whole.
The way I perceive it, because I perceive it a little different. What I perceive is that there are two parallel universes or timelines in which time runs the opposite direction. And there are certain areas where there is like a crossover area. And we saw that in some of the, like you can enter this area, like there's like those doors and whatever, and then you're in the middle space and then you move to the other side, or you can create temporary crossover type of things in certain locations. And that there's an interest in gaining information from one timeline that is running the opposite way of the other timeline about what's going to happen next so you can get out ahead of it. That was what I thought I was understanding about Tenet, but the way you're describing it seems different to me.
Yeah, so there's only one. So there's the turnstile. You go in it, it spins you around, and when you come out, you're now going backwards through time. But from your perception, it moves like forward, right? But it's obviously the Doppler effect, so everything's backwards. So hot is cold and things like this. That part wasn't really clear. I haven't really found an explanation about the mechanics of that. But the Doppler effect is essentially the red and the blue, right? So I don't know if you notice in a film, whenever they're moving forward in time, it's red.
Yes.
Whenever they're moving backwards, it's blue.
That's why I was thinking that I was thinking of that as like red universe, blue universe, or red timeline, blue timeline.
So it's meant to be red forward, blue backwards, because the Doppler effect is about heat turning to cold, which is tied into, I can't remember off the top of my head what it is. You might want to bring that up. The Doppler effect. There might be like a quick explanation on Google, but yeah. And they never really explain how the turnstile works, which I like. I don't need to know how a turnstile works. We just know it works, and it can send you back down the timeline. But and then of course you get into the whole thing of temporal pincer movements, where you're attacking a situation from both sides of the time, right? So one of you's going forward in time, the other's going back, and that way, it's impossible to kind of fail. But I think the main kind of takeaway is that what's happened. You can't really change the past. If someone's died, they've died. And it's a classic kind of time travel situation where a lot of people think they're going, you get this with many time travel films. I think it's kind of correct. Think how many films they go back in time to try and change the past, and their actions actually create the thing they're trying to stop.
Yeah, 100%, right? Yeah. Let me just do what the Doppler effect is right here. Doppler effect or Doppler shift is the apparent change in frequency of a wave in relation to an observer moving relative to the wave source. It is named after Austrian physicist Christian Doppler. A common example of Doppler shift is the change of pitch heard when a vehicle sounding a horn approaches and recedes from an observer. Compared to the emitted frequency, the received frequency is higher during the approach, identical at the instant of passing by, and lower during the recession. Okay, so the way that you're describing Tenet is giving me another thing to think about it, right? Like I had perceived it as separate realities, either separate universes or separate timelines that were moving in opposite directions, and that there was a drive to collect intelligence from the whatever one you weren't in order to be able to understand what might be coming and try and get out ahead of it, as opposed to go back and fix something. And that a temporal pincer movement was when you would move over to the other side to try and prevent something to happen from, or whatever it is, and like get out ahead of it in time to intercept it. I need to watch it again. I only watched it once. It made me mad because everything was I don't like, my hearing isn't great anyway. And so when I'm struggling to hear the dialogue amongst the noise, it fucks with my ability to like perceive and understand what's happening. And the way that I watched it, there was no ability to get closed captions. So let me see if we'll go back and watch it again and see if I can get closed captions so I can actually hear what's being said in some of those.
Apparently, apparently Christopher Nolan done it on purpose. He made the background noise really loud and made it really quiet. Again, I don't think he gave a real legitimate reason why he done that. That's him just fucking with people, I think.
He always does. This is very common. A lot of these kinds of movies and TV shows. There's this again, and I brought this up a couple of times, and like I went through this with Chris Miner, and I'm starting to understand a little bit more the further I get away from it because I had to sort through the chicken feed. There's this book called Animate versus Inanimate, in which there's this idea of a reverse universe in which everything is the same except for the same just backwards, except for that there's the second law of thermodynamics doesn't translate, which basically makes humans the exception to everything else. But in this reverse universe, there comes the question, which universe are we actually in? We always think that we're in the real one, and anything that would be reversed would be the other one or whatever, right? But we don't know that. We could be the mirror or the reverse of something else. So in one of the universes, things would be alive and in the process of dying. And in the other universe, things would be dead and in the process of coming to life, right? And this gets in, that's what it's called, animate and inanimate, right? And it explains the physics of like some of what we saw in terms of like the bullet moving the other way, or things that, seem to be, someone falling down, how that would actually be them bouncing up and, all that kind of stuff. And a lot of people, if you look into the chatter about this book, which is from like 100 years ago or more, right, by this gentleman, William Sidis, which is, I think is a cipher. There's a lot of chatter that this was the motivation for Christopher Nolan's movie, right? That he's aware of this work, and that this is a display of that. I think there are some ideas in the animate versus inanimate book that are right, and then there's a lot of chicken feed around it, right? Either intentionally or unintentionally, right? Since we've clarified that both things can be valid, but it's basically there's only one law that isn't reversible, and so that's the one where you can kind of manipulate things, and that seems to be like what is happening when they do the temporal pincer movements, is they're manipulating that one exception that only humans really have the ability to interact with, right? So
I'll just add a few more little things there that you probably won't be able to process right now, but as the protagonist is starting to work out how time travel works, when he gets to the end, he realizes that actually ignorance he says ignorance is our ammunition. Not knowing what's going to happen is actually beneficial for you, because if you know what's going to happen, you're going to try and interfere, and it will just backfire because you can't change what's already happened. So I think that's very important for all of us who, maybe not me and you, but the conspiracy world that's constantly trying to like figure things out. Maybe not knowing is actually better for you. You'll have a better chance of tackling it. Another thing is, this film came out during the peak of the very first lockdown. Somehow, the cinemas got off a free pass and were allowed to open and were allowed to show this film in the year 2020, which I think is incredible. Another thing, regarding the double cross, right? We may have said this on the first show. Their symbols are the X and the X, right? Roman numeral was 10 and 10, which is 20. Which is 10 and 10, tenant, 10 and 10. But also in the year 2020 is obviously, I think, us, the whole collective, went through a turnstile and are heading backwards now. I feel like that's why the time is so manipulated at the moment. I think we're somehow heading backwards. And the way things are going, I think stuff is coming undone, and cultures and traditions are starting to head back to the old ways. And I don't know. I think, who knows? I think in maybe 100 years' time, we're going to be back pushing horse and buggy around. Time seems to be going backwards, and things are going to start devolving. Maybe, I don't know. There's a lot of things there.
Okay, so I mean, and then it brings up the question, is temporal pincer movement on some level involve people moving from the regular universe to the reverse universe? And that's why it appears that time is moving backwards, right? Okay, so let me
Oh,
just
sorry. One last thing, Emily.
yeah.
So red is moving forward, blue is moving backwards, purple is the place in between.
Yes.
What was 2020? The year
Yeah.
of purple, right?
Purple.
Fucking everything. Purple
Yeah.
this, purple that. The
No,
color of illusion, by the way.
We talked about this when Tenet came out. It was during the same period of time as the George Floyd riots, and we talked about because they were in Minneapolis, right? And Minneapolis has a twin city called St. Paul, and there's a river running through it. So we were talking about the river being the purple zone, and then one side being the red and one side being the blue, and that the George Floyd riots were like a ritual to bring that in. Right.
Yeah.
And of course, you have Prince being from Minneapolis and he's purple. And, right. So, like, there was all sorts of things that sort of, signal that. We did a couple conspiracy cocktails that were sort of based on that idea. And my friend Darren Williams, who also, I should probably do a show with him sometime soon. He lives in England as well. He brought forward this idea that he called time acupuncture, right? Which he basically said is like, okay, so we live in Tenet. There's a reverse universe, or there's a reality in which time runs the other way. So you can gain information from that reality about things that might be coming in yours. And you can go poke a hole in it to relieve the pressure to stop some terrible thing from happening or some good thing from happening, right? You can let the steam out of the valve. And that was kind of an interesting idea we played with. I want to show you something here. I just want to make sure I'm understanding correctly. This is the Paris Opera House. Is that the same place we were just looking at?
In what, Tenet?
Yeah.
No, Tenet is the Tallinn. It's in the film. It's meant to be Kiev in Ukraine, but it's actually the Tallinn Opera House in Estonia.
Okay. So it wasn't the same one. I was just trying to. So Tallinn Opera House. Opera.
It would be Tallin.
Tall. Okay. So let's see. Okay, yeah, I see how that would be the same one. Okay, that one looks more like it to me. Okay, but let's talk about opera houses for a second. First of all,
it's that one there on the far right top corner.
That's the
one.
Yeah,
that's the one they filmed at. Yeah,
that's a pretty interesting looking place from above, right? Like, I would love to see a top down view on that. Here's one that's almost look at that. It looks like a Mayan pyramid almost.
Yeah, apparently it was a Soviet swimming center for the Olympics or something like that originally.
Okay. But let's talk about opera houses for a second. So first of all, the word operation has opera in it. Okay. But one of the things that most opera houses have, including this one and including the one that I was looking at there in Paris, they have the same thing that government buildings have, which are these, I forget what you call these things, right? The like the dome, right?
Yeah.
Type of thing, and they all have these like winding stairwells and all of this kind of stuff, right? So I did a show with Roman Merrill, who I like to call Roman numeral, and you were talking about Roman numerals before, and we were talking about that. I think that this is sort of some of these, I forget, there's a name for what these things are, and I can't think of it right now, but they also look like the head or the eye of a particle accelerator. So I think they build these structures either on natural portals or on some place where there's a particle accelerator underneath. And again, I'm open to whether or not particle accelerators are, quote, natural or something that is built by man or whatever. I think there's both things, but these buildings seem to me to be built on some point of like crossover or portal or vortex or some place where either all the time or on certain occasions, there's an energy field that opens something up to make it like a purple zone where you can cross over. And you can see right here, we have a purple light, right? And look, there's like some kind of ritual with candles and lights happening there or whatever. Okay. In this movie that we watched at Conspiracy Cocktail last year, the movie's called Exit. It's an Australian film from 2011. About a group of people who have realized that there are doorways or portals to other dimensions, and that you access these through specific buildings, right? Let me see if I can find the trailer for the film Exit Film 2011 Australia. Right. And this was about, we found this film just after I had started talking about the interdimensional architecture. Right. And this film seems to play with the same idea that I had been talking. Let me see if I can find the trailer here. Let's see if I can find the trailer. Here we go. This is it. All right. Let's share here.
Doesn't matter. It's not clouds or harps or dead relatives or all the answers. There's something else.
How many years has it been lost? Thousands? More. Some must walk right past it every morning. Wood and metal. A lock. A key. But we're not rats. We know better. We're still looking. Do you know how many doors there are in a city this size? And there are more every day. We open those doors every day. We feel the thrill, the electricity, the disappointment. But not you. You're different. You come here tonight and you tell me that you found it. Thousands of years, thousands of doors, all of us searching. And you think you're the one. Can you imagine?
So the movie, we watched it, it's quite a boring movie, but essentially you have like a ragtag, there's various groups of people who seem to be pursuing the same thing, the idea that there are access to other realities or timelines, or that we're in some sort of game and there's an exit or maybe multiple exits, and they've made it their mission to figure out the buildings that they think this could be possible in, and then get inside those buildings, right? And they're building up mock-up versions of the city and keeping track of which ones that they've checked and it was a nothing burger and which one, all that kind of stuff. And at the end of the movie, the spot does turn out to be, or at least it doesn't get resolved in the way you would think. And I was unclear to me whether the idea is that there's not just one place for everyone, but that, maybe it's a different location for different kind of people or whatever. But where the thing comes to resolution was in an opera house or a theater of some sort, right? In a specific seat and whatever, and she's there, and it was a while ago, and it was kind of a terrible movie, but a lot of times these movies are, right? Yeah. So if you look at the designs of the opera houses, it feels like this beautiful ornate creation to disguise the fact that this thing is some sort of portal or particle accelerator or reactor of some kind of like energetic space or space capable of holding open an energy field or something like that, right? And you know, the fact that lots of people go there and applaud for certain tones and notes being hit creates energy that could be stored and collected or used to pass things through or whatnot, right? So like, you know, how opera became a thing and how, you know, they intentionally design those buildings to be able to like amplify that sound, that wave, and sound is a frequency, right? So what else can you do in those buildings? And there's like, those buildings aren't full of people all of the time, right? So what's happening at these places when nobody's there? And what's the difference between having nobody be there and having lots of people be there, right? In terms of like why you might want to do this when the place is full as opposed to when it's empty. Obviously, creation of chaos and losing things in the fold and all of this kind of stuff, right? But I mean, these could just be like highly ornate, you know, sort of dimensional movement machines.
Right, yeah. Doorways, or that's where the turnstile is, but maybe it's not like a big concrete thing that spins you around. Maybe it's just an invisible turnstile.
Yeah.
Once you step into it and step out, you're now moving backwards, or you're on the flip side. Yeah. I mean, I ultimately think that's it. I think the real keys to this universe are out in the open, and the whole point of the black cube reality, i.e. the internet, is to keep us so busy looking down at this that we never go out and mess around, tour around with this kind of thing, you know, ultimately.
I mean, have you ever, like, I've certainly experienced this where like I go into like a musical event, like a party, right, for me, because that's what I like the techno music and whatever. And like when I come back outside after the party, something is tangibly different than when I went in terms of the reality. And one will just think, oh, well, like I'm in a good mood now because I danced or I heard great music or I had some sort of spiritual transformation or I ascended or whatever. But like very few people are like, is this actually the same? Did I step out into the same place that I arrived here from? Right? Because it's just small differences. And when someone's coming out of an event like that, they're talking to their friends. They might be still high from drugs or whatever it is, right? But you know, there's a reason why certain things happen in certain locations, right? Whether those things be very exoteric and everyone knows, oh, this location is where you go to listen to this, or whether they be very hidden things where underground activities take place. Like things aren't just chosen in certain locations for no reason generally.
Yes. I often get the thing where I feel like I'm a ghost. Like in Paris, I felt like a ghost, and there were people sort of looking at me in a way which just didn't make sense. Like I clearly stood out, you know. It was very much, and a lot of people pointed this out to me. It wasn't me saying this. It was like Inception, you know, when he's doing like the dream training, and he's teaching that the new recruit, like, you know, you can't be too outrageous with your dream architecture, or else the projections will jump on you. You know, the subconscious will jump on you because it was so frightened about what's going on. And you start to see all the projections, which look like regular people, to start to look at her and stuff. And a lot of that stuff was happening. So energetically, there was something else going on in Paris. And there's probably something bigger going on in France, I reckon, under the guise of this Exercise Orion. Maybe new avatars are being generated right there, you know. Maybe this is how they insert new avatars into the Matrix. They have to shut off a certain country and they just start popping out of reality or something. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's certainly, I mean, if you're trying to traffic something, you want it to arrive and not have anybody notice that it's arrived. Or if you're trying to get something out of there, you don't want people to notice that it's gone missing, or if they do notice it's gone missing, they want there to be a possible excuse for it or whatever it is, right?
A reasonable excuse, a
reasonable excuse. What you were saying about people respond funny to you, right? So like one of the things that happened to me for like a really long time at parties in Los Angeles is for all of the thousands of parties I've ever been to, there are very few pictures of me. So there are photographers that go around all the parties and events in Los Angeles and take pictures. And oftentimes after parties, even parties that are fairly underground, on their own private website, you'll be able to go back and find pictures of the party, right? And I'd say for all of the photo galleries from parties I've ever looked at, mostly in Los Angeles, I wouldn't say this phenomenon is true in Austin. Some other phenomenons are true. There's like maybe 3 to 5 existing pictures of me. And sometimes there will be a picture of a party that I was at of a scenario that I know I was part of, and I am not in the picture. Right. And I also have often had the experience at parties of somebody telling me that they were looking for me all night and they couldn't find me, but I was in the same place all night. And the place wasn't that big. So, right. So if you just did a circle of the room, you would see me, because I tend to dance and I tend to find myself a spot that I like and stay there pretty much all night, unless I go get a drink, go to the bathroom, or go off to look for whoever I came with. And then I generally come back to that spot. And if I can't find the person I'm looking for, I'll go stay in the same spot. So when they come looking for me, they'll be able to find me, right? Especially if we were at one point at that spot together, right? That's generally where you go back and look for someone, right? So I've had people be like, I couldn't find you all night. And then when they finally find me, it's like by the entrance or the exit at the end or something like that, right? And also, you know, then not being in the pictures. I was one time at this outdoor party that was on an Indian reservation in, what's the place? I always forget what the name of this place is. It's a place just north of San Diego. It's like a very well-to-do place. I can't think of the name right now, right? But I was like at this party at an Indian reservation inland where there was like no cell phone reception or anything like that, right? So you think, okay, like a more natural environment, but then you also know that like these Indian locations, those tend to be natural portals. So all kinds of weird things going on. But a friend who was also like more with eyes to see and also metaphysically gifted or whatever was telling me she was watching me dance from like across the sort of little area that they had cordoned off as the dance floor for this one stage. And she said I was flickering in and out. Like I would disappear and come back and disappear and come back, right? And sometimes she would see like things move through me, right? Like others, like it would seem like a person was walking through me and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know what that is, but it matches this idea of people responding oddly to you or not responding at all or whatever it is. And for like, I used to complain about at parties in Los Angeles, nobody ever talked to me. Well, you can't talk to someone if you can't see them. Right.
Yeah.
I had that problem here in Austin. Like in Austin, everybody talks to me. In Los Angeles, nobody talks to me at parties. Now, some of that could be explained. I mean, the vibe is very different. The kind of people are very different and whatever. But I'd say for like the 20 years, 25 years, I went to parties in Los Angeles, I've made like 2 or 3 friends. And for the few years I went to parties here in Austin, I have hundreds of friends. Right. You know, kind of thing. So it's this bizarre, but the locations are different, right? It's a very different kind of environment that things are happening in here versus in Los Angeles. Right.
Maybe you're a ghost, Emily, as well. Like maybe we're just ghosts walking around here. Like you still have, I'm guessing you still haven't watched The Sixth Sense with Bruce Willis, right?
I watched it. I watched it
all the way to the end.
Yeah. No. Totally.
Oh, okay, good. So you see how he, from his perception, he's seeing what he wants to see, right? And he's still he's not having conversations with his wife, but he's interacting with his wife and everyone around him. And it's kind of making sense to him, but really he's just an invisible ghost slamming doors and making noises.
Yeah.
And I sometimes, I feel like that. Or people just double take me, like they've seen, or like they recognize me. And I know we've spoken about this before, but so many people say to me, "You look like so and so," who looks nothing like me. The person they're describing has like a celebrity or a friend that looks nothing like me. So I don't know. Maybe I'm or I'm not a ghost. I'm a reptile that can just appear to people whatever they want to see. Like.
Yeah, I get that sometimes. People will tell me that I look exactly like someone else or whatever, or they'll be like, oh my God, your personality reminds me exactly of so-and-so. And sometimes I do wonder if I just have this ability to resonate whatever that person needs at that moment or something like that, right? Which would be an interesting skill to have, especially if you were conscious of it and were able to take it, right? But yeah, no, I mean, I asked myself some of the
Shapeshifter.
same sets of questions, right? Remember I don't know if you ever saw Fringe, but there was that interesting shape-shifting technology and whatnot, right? That allowed for very rapid reformation. That was kind of, and it all connected to the roof of the mouth, right? They had this device that they plugged in like with prongs into the roof of the mouth, and that would allow them to shapeshift. Right. So I wonder if there's like, and think about what the roof of the mouth is. It's like a cathedral or the dome in an opera house.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
The internal cathedral, like that the sound vibrates around in. So, you do have an interesting voice, as do I. So maybe there's something about the voice that creates that sort of effect or something. So opera house. Is there something else going on in France behind the scenes? Forget about the military, forget about the protests or something, anything like that. Is there like something else weirder that you were able to pick up on going on in France that could be the thing that is hiding amongst all of this chaos?
I think there is, but I'm trying to pinpoint what that is. I don't know. I can't pinpoint what that is. I definitely think there's something bigger going on in France right now. I've got many theories. Like I said, I think they're building the backstory and the fake artificial evidence that they're going to use in years to come to say that there was a World War III, and this will be the footage of them. They're going to try and flip it around and say that that was actually Russian troops and that the people were fighting against Russian troops and so on. Because in the chat, do you know what I'm saying? Like, because I think World War II is a pure bullshitty fiction of pure simulated battles that later on they turned into real battles. So if you go into the chat, I've sent you like a link. It's the document for the chicken feed for Exercise Orion.
Yeah. Let's see. All right, there we go. Okay.
Did you just laugh because that's so ridiculous, or because that's so genius, or because it's so out there?
I mean,
this one. Okay, we'll look at this one quickly. I sent you two. We'll look at this one quickly.
Okay.
If you go down, scroll down. I just saw the word multi-dimensional. I think it's nearer to the top. I think it's like the first little bit of writing underneath the main picture. Well, I just saw that word multi-dimensional there at the bottom. Yep. I've just thought, they drop in the truth all the time.
Yep. There's something here that I've never heard of before too, called Operation Serval. What the hell is Operation Serval? Okay, it takes me to Operation Serval, and then it's like this 2016. What is Operation Serval?
So I think, I don't know. Yeah, so let's just check out.
Okay, Operation Serval is a French military operation in Mali to oust Islamic militants, which is always the story. Okay.
So traditionally, when they planned this exercise Orion 23 back in 2020, it was meant to simulate fighting Islamic militia. And since the Ukraine thing, they've changed all the fictional characters into a Russian-esque fictional thing. So if you go to the other thing I sent you in the chats,
okay,
we'll look at the actual document very quickly. And but their symbol, see their symbol in the background? I can see it's covered up by a press kit. There's two crosses in there. There's a double cross in there.
Yep.
A fictitious but credible scenario.
Yep.
It gives you White Orion there. It says Operation Resilient, blah, blah, blah. But there's a map somewhere, and it's basically, although it's in France, it's meant to represent Ukraine.
Okay.
And they've given it a fake name, like Arland or something like that. There it is. A fictitious
Arnland. Right.
Right, and the enemy is called Mercure, which is meant to represent Russia. So yeah, it wouldn't surprise me in 50 years' time they use this tried to pass this footage off as the actual footage of them liberating Ukraine from Russian troops or something.
Yeah. Okay.
Because this is how they fake world wars, guys. This is how they do it.
This is how they do it. Okay, this is making me think of something. Okay, first of all, I always pay attention to when I see this kind of symbolism, like the beehive or the geometric type lattice kind of thing. It's been coming up a lot, so I'm just noting that here. I'm not going to get into a deep explanation of it, but so the thing about Paris, there is something about Paris that I want to say here. So one of the phenomenon I notice about Austin is that when I go outside at night, when Austin is all lit up, does not look like this during the day. It requires the effect of the choreography of the lights of the building of downtown Austin. But I have a very interesting vantage point to look at the city, right? And remember, Oracle is right next to me. From my vantage point, and you can see this on any night that is fairly clear and where the lights are all lit up and whatnot. Sometimes the lights are really on, a lot of them, and sometimes they're not in the city. You can see this. It's very much highlighted like when you're on mushrooms. It's like, oh my God, like that was how I first noticed it. And then I can find it when I'm not on mushrooms, right? That if you look from a certain perspective, the city of Austin can appear to be the Giza Plateau, can appear to be the Champs-Élysées or some part of Paris, can appear to be the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco. And there's other ways you can look at it that you can see that it looks sort of like some sort of like Mayan landscape, like one of those ancient Mayan or Peruvian cities or something like that, right? And so one of the things I wonder about what's going on with Austin, because it's not like your typical other great cities of the world, even though it's becoming very, very popular and a huge destination point and very important in a variety of ways. It's small, right? But like, I wonder if there's this idea for it to be sort of a portal or an avatar for many other places, right? So I've just identified a few, right? And you could come here and we could go up to the roof and I could show you that why I'm saying that. And you'd be like, oh, wow. Okay. Like I can see that from this angle, that's what it looks like. From this angle, it looks like that. From that angle, it looks like that. For there to be almost this ability for cities to like maybe Austin is a place, is like a portal, whether this be actual or just like metaphorically or ideologically or something like that, to access many of these other cities, that they're on some level like stacked on top of each other or interchangeable in some way, right? And I'm wondering if like what is going on in Paris is somehow connected to this, right? Like if they're opening up a new access point to Paris that has not been open up till this point, right? And that is like a direct connect between Austin and Paris.
So
I'm not saying, I'm sure this has happened other times with other cities or whatever it is, but there's a huge connection between Austin and France. Do you want to know what that is? You know what Austin used to be called before it was called Austin?
Waterloo.
Yeah. Right. I mean, there's a variety of references to things that we think of as French. I found one the other day, but my mind is so packed with information, I can't remember what it was. And I thought it was an interesting addition to my commentary on Waterloo, right? The Colorado River running through downtown Austin could be equal to La Seine, right? Running through Paris. I mean, there's all kinds of things going on here with that type of, oh, I know what it was. So literally the street called Waterloo is right next to near my apartment. I was looking at doing some synchromysticism for someone else, and we ended up on the city that my mom was born in Ohio, which is Euclid. And there's an area in Euclid that's also called Waterloo Art Districts that's right on the water, right? I thought that was interesting that my mom came from a place that had like that similar name place connection, right? So I don't know, but I can also show you these other, Chad Stumkey did a really good job of overlaying his measurements of the Giza Plateau on top of the city of Austin, and that fit as well.
I would love to hear. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't decoded Paris like that. I know I heard a recent Ross Ben conversation where he was saying like Paris is significant because it has the most public art for any city, and his city of Philadelphia comes second to Paris, and he's saying that's that's important to geomancy and stuff. Paris is the city of light.
Paris,
and I don't know, like London's the big smoke. That's the city of light. It's all kind of magician-y kind of references, isn't it? Smoke, mirrors, lights, all this kind of trickery. I don't know what Austin's nickname is.
Some people would refer to it as the live music capital of the world. People would there's the saying about Austin, keep Austin weird. Obviously, Austin starts with AU, which is gold, which is the first element on the periodic table, right? So there's
you know what we need to find, which I've been looking for, and it's hard to find because there's so much chicken feed hiding it. A city that is generally known as a city of mirrors. Because if you Google the city of mirrors, it keeps coming up with some stupid vampire book, which might have a few clues in it. But we've got the city of smoke, the big smoke, London. We got the city of light, Paris. Where's the city of mirrors at? Where's the city of mirrors has got to be the other magician point of our false reality.
This might be it, because the amount of mirror built, like this is the city where I first recognized the whole thing with these like reflecting in the other buildings, and not that other cities don't have it. Plenty of other cities are starting to have it, but Austin is really small. So these buildings that are very reflective and causing all of these like psychedelic or optical illusions are all very close to each other. So they're creating a lot of like, it's pretty intense. It feels very psychedelic when you go downtown.
Interesting.
Right. And what if the mirrors are the thing that is portaling kind of to these other places, right? What if like the mirrors reflect other cities, right? Like if, let's just say Austin is going to become the first city that you don't ever need to leave in order to experience the entire world, right? Mm-hmm. Like that would be a reflection of Paris, a reflection of San Francisco, a reflection of that can be experienced through augmenting the reality here.
Yeah. It'd be interesting, Emily. I don't think you'll be able to do it right now, but if there's been any kind of like other reference points to Austin being the city of mirrors, like maybe a famous book, or maybe it was, years ago, someone might have called it that. Someone famous, some significant character. But I think you're right. I think with all the reflective buildings that you talk about, it's right there in your face. It just isn't called that on a pop culture reference.
There's a book that I just finished reading that gentleman Cameron Crime Fighter sent me is called Invisible Cities by Italo Calvino, right? Mm-hmm. And he sent it to me almost 2 years ago, but I just finished reading it now because that's how behind I am on book reading and whatever, right? But what's interesting about it's like a book of kind of poems, and then there are interludes, right? But a lot of the things that are being discussed about cities in there are things that in the period of time from when he sent me the book to when I actually read it are things that I have said about this city. Right. And there's this quote in there that is about like, whenever I speak of any city, I am actually speaking about my city. So implying that like every city is both uniquely its own self, but also a reflection of all of the other ones. Right. And the book itself is what's called a framing device or a framework device. So it's like a type of steganography. There's something coded within it. And there was a particular one that he sent me the book marked to. I've read the whole book. I read that original one when he sent it, and then I didn't read the rest until, the last couple of months. I started reading it slowly, one poem at a time and whatnot. But it's amazing how many things I said that matched that in the time from when I received it and when I actually looked at it. I would have to go through and see if there's any mirror references that I missed. Right? Or any reflection. We have to sometimes just think about reflective surfaces or reflections as well as just mirrors, because that's a way to sort of describe it as well. Let me just do a quick Austin City of mirrors. Let's see if I can get anything from mine. All right. There's also like at the period of time that he sent it to me, like a few days or weeks after that, I was walking around downtown and I saw that there was some art exhibit about the many other Austins, or like the other reflected Austins, but it was closed that day. And when I went back to try and go, it was gone. Right. Okay. So let's see what we've got here. There is, so I typed in Austin City of Mirrors. And so is this, there seems to be like a book called a horror novel. Maybe this is the movie you're talking about. I'm just trying to see if there's anything. The City of Mirrors is a novel by Justin.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, Emily. I tried to look the other day, and this vampire book keeps coming up again and again and again.
Okay, which
it's
is
purely ChickenFeed hiding the real City of Mirrors.
All right, here's something. Mirrors 2019 at the Austin Scottish Rite Theatre. Let's see what this is. Mirrors is currently in development with Parody Productions. That's interesting. Austin Scottish Rite Theatre is thrilled to present an installment of our staged reading series with this incredible cast. People, look at the names of the people who are in this. Crystal Bird Caviel is playing Bird Wilson.
Keys Fox.
Holly McDuff Sykes, like Psych Man, right? Hazard, Ashley Nicole Hazard, Allegra Fox, Delonte Keys. This is some interesting. And then look at this image, and that's all the information that there is on it.
Wow.
And this was in 2019. And look, she has a NASA shirt on. And this guy's got stripes like he's, what's his name? The French guy, Marcel Marceau, or in jail or something. There's a Spider-Man thing in the back.
The interesting synchronicity, the day before I left to go Paris, it was that Marcel guy's, it was his day.
Oh, yeah.
On Google. Like, you know, we had the little Google picture.
Look at this.
And I clicked on.
Look at this symbol for the Austin Scottish Rite Theatre. It's two reflective birds. It's a reflection of the other. It's the reverse universe. And this theater's been here since 1871. All right, so I think this is a pretty good, that's a pretty good find. I'm just trying to see what else. There's something at a church here called Mirrors. Let's see what else I can find. I'm just looking to see if there's anything else that jumps out at me. Is there a city that mirrors Seattle? Right? Places to live, move, and it's suggesting Austin is very Seattle-esque, but friendlier and sunnier. I never go around mirrors. 1988 Austin city limits. It's on the video is unavailable.
Because when you think about going back to Tenant, right?
Yeah.
Or let's talk about doppelgangers, right? The old tale is if you saw your doppelganger, it meant you were about to die. And what do they say in like Tenant? Like don't go and interact with yourself.
Yep.
Like because the universe will implode. So there's some kind of thing there. You know, your doppelganger is probably you jumping back through time.
Yep. Have you ever seen your doppelganger?
I've seen many variations of me. Not my exact doppelganger, no. But everyone else claims they see. Everyone else reckons they know a version of me.
All right. So I've had two experiences. I've told them before. I don't know that you know them, so I'm going to say them. And I consider them slightly different, but with some similarities. Okay. So the first time I ever saw something like that, I was at this mall called the Topanga Plaza, which is in Woodland Hills in Los Angeles, which is it's a suburb near where I grew up, and I spent a lot of time there. And I was going down an escalator, right? And like the way the escalator, I want to see if I can find a picture of an escalator that matches like what this particular escalator looked like, because the escalator, like, let me just see if like mirrored escalator. escalator. Let's see if I can find one that looks all right, like what these are all really weird and psychedelic looking. This is not what I'm trying to find. I'm just trying to find. So, okay, you know how like when you're on the escalator, there's like a wall next to you, and then there's like a pillar in between, and then there's the escalator going the other direction on the other side of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the walls of this escalator were mirrors. So I was going down the escalator, right? And there was somebody coming up the escalator that looked exactly like me. And for a second, I wasn't sure if I wasn't just seeing my reflection in the mirror. So I looked, and no, it wasn't, right? But it was real. There was a moment when our eyes met, and it was so weird. It was one, and this was long before I was into any of this shit. This was like more than 20 years ago. This is when I was in my 20s. Okay, early 20s. So, but it was like it was very disorienting. It was very confusing, right? I can't tell you for sure whether or not she was wearing the same thing that I was wearing, because I was just so disoriented by the whole thing, right?
Mm.
Okay, so that happened, and then I was at this party that I used to go to in Los Angeles called Absurd, and I know for sure this was in 2005. So the other thing must have happened in the 90s, and this was in 2005. And this party Absurd went on for a couple of years, and it was like very much British style, like acid tech house, right? Eddie Richards, Terry Francis, Nathan Coles. And for a period of time, they were having these parties at this location in an industrial part of the valley. And you go in, it just looks like a warehouse. When you go inside, the entire place is white, and there are no corners. The whole building has been rounded on the inside for perfection of sound, right? And like it was really good. The music is great, sound is really good. And at this particular party, like Nathan Coles was like, he used to play these, he passed recently. It's very sad, but like he would drop these vocals into tracks that I don't know how this fucking happened, but like when he would drop the vocal, that very thing would be happening to you in real life, right? So like he had this track that is like someone like saying words from like Alice in Wonderland about like finding on a pill on the floor that says eat me. And at that moment I fucking looked down, and there was a pill on the floor right in front of me, right? Like it was just like weird shit happening like that, right? But I noticed it. I can't remember if it was this party or there was two parties at the same location. One time I noticed that there was somebody on the other side of the room from me that looked almost exactly like me, but it was a boy. They were wearing pretty much the same kind of outfit. Like they had on black bottoms and white top, right? And tennis shoes. And they look almost exactly like me, but a man, but like kind of a feminine looking man, right? And I wanted to go over and get closer to him and check him out. But every time I would walk over to the other side of the room, he would walk over to the side that I was on. It was like this went on all night. It was like we could never be in the same place at the same time. And then at a certain point, it was almost like the music did another one of those things where it gave the command. And suddenly I felt like the two things came into one, and I was like in the middle of the room. Almost like the two halves became one. So I don't know if I was having a spiritual experience of like recognizing the male and female aspects of myself. That's what that one more felt like, where the one in the mall felt more like what we're talking about, right? Seeing yourself moving forward and backward through time.
Was there any mirrors around at that absurd party?
No mirrors at the party except for like maybe in the bathroom, right? But I will say this, the whiteness of the room, it was very shiny. Right? It wasn't like a matte white. It was kind of shiny. So it wasn't a completely unreflective surface, but I was not seeing myself in mirrors. There was definitely mirrors involved in the first scenario.
Yeah. No, I'm not saying you're seeing, I'm saying mirrors are probably always around when your doppelganger might.
Oh, all the absurd
out.
parties, all the absurd parties also always have a disco ball at the center of the room hanging from the ceiling. And I'm sure you've seen some of the things I've said about disco balls recently.
Oh yeah. It's good stuff.
Yeah. Okay. So right. So this idea of Austin being a mirrored city, I think that Scottish Rite thing was probably the best clue we have here. Oh, there's this song here, I Never Go Around Mirrors from 1988. And it's it's a cover by someone named Keith Whitley of a song by someone named Lefty Frizzell. So Left Hand Path, right? To a certain extent. Austin City Limits is has a very interesting history. And then, so that could be something there. I'm just checking to see if there's anything else that pops out to me as, oh, this is interesting. It links to, I looked up Austin City of Mirrors, and there's a listing here for Traverse City, Michigan, which is where my friend Chad Stumpke, so this is talking about bathroom mirrors, Glass Guru, but why would Traverse City be listed here? Except for I was talking about how my friend Chad overlaid his measurements of Giza Plateau on Austin. He lives in Traverse City, Michigan. And of course, traverse is like traversable, like traversing a wormhole, right? So that's kind of interesting. And then here's, okay, City of Mirrors in Philadelphia. It's a yellow page listing with no further. So it's interesting. Allison McDowell is in Philadelphia, and she and I have been cross-pollinating each other's information. And there's a lot of interesting stuff going on there in similar ways to things going on here. And of course, Philadelphia is also where Razben is. Smoke and Mirrors Art Show in Austin at Almost Real, April 23rd, 2022.
It's all about the smoke and mirrors, you know, and lights.
Just going to see if there's anything interesting here. That's, yeah, nothing that I can completely pull out at. Shelby Lane. I feel like I've been to this place for a party before. Okay, so yeah. All right. Let's do this. Unless there's something is there anything that you wanted to say about that virus thread that you reminded me of this morning? Or do you want to just move on to the Butlerian Jihad?
No, but I'm sure you got the where I was going with the thread. It's just reverse. There was a lot of reverse psychology operations going on with the scandemic, which made people essentially dig deeper into the matrix instead of get out of it.
Oh,
that's the main point.
100%.
So,
yeah.
That was it. No, let's move on to Butlerian Jihad.
Okay, so as soon as we finished our show last week, I went out for some exercise because after I've been sitting still for this long, I need to move or my back is hurting. And this isn't something that I didn't know before, but I hadn't thought about it in this way. The trail that I exercise on every day, right? And that is literally what I talk about in the content of all my shows where I'm talking about the time I spend in Austin, is the Ann and Roy Butler hike and bike trail.
Yeah.
Okay. And this is the trail goes, it's all this whole area that's highlighted red. So this is the exercise path that I take every time I'm out exercising and making comments on the buildings and this and that, and all the things I ever say occur on the Butler Trail. And think about the things that are going on in Austin right now in terms of the development of technology, the players that have moved here, all of the kind of stuff. Allison McDowell had a really good series on Austin that she posted last year, that all the locations she looked at are locations I've looked at, sometimes for different reasons, right? But all centered on the same things. So this is the trail right here. And basically the Butlerian Jihad is about the overthrow of technology. Explain to people one more time what the Butlerian Jihad is.
Sorry, I was on mute there. Yeah, it's from the Dune universe, and it sets the scene for why Dune, there's no AI, there's no robots in Dune. It's very primitive. Because at one point the thinking machines had pretty much taken over humanity and were, under the guise of, doing good things for humans, they were actually killing humans off and keeping humans as slaves. But, it wasn't good. And eventually I can't remember. There's a very famous character called something Butler, and the machines killed her daughter, and of course, this led the humans to have an uprising, and the Butler was used as like a martyr to lead people, because the people organizing the uprising against the machines knew they had to kind of like tie it into some religious things. They tied it into Catholicism, and they used the Butler death as like a religious archetype. And yeah, it was anyway. It was always referred to as the Butlerian Jihad when they finally got rid of machines in all forms and all shapes. And it wasn't just about getting rid of the machines. It was anyone who had like a machine-like way of thinking. And then this, of course, led to better things for the humans. They went back to nature and they got back on psychedelics, and then space travel became available. Yeah. And I think that's a prophecy of our experience. I think as long as we have thinking machines in our lives, we are not going to go anywhere anytime soon. I think we really have to get rid of. I think I constantly hear podcasts and stuff. People like talking about how bad Instagram and all that. The only way is to get rid of all of it, every single part of it. And I think then we will uncover either psychedelic space travel or actual kind of space travel in some form. But yeah, Butler was a character. I don't know. There might be a better description on Google. I think I've done a terrible job of describing it there, but
I'll link the video that you once sent me about the Butler, or maybe Jeff sent it based on something you said. I'll find it and post it.
Yeah. I sent it. Yeah, there's loads. If anyone wants to YouTube what is Butlerian Jihad, they'll give you a better description of it. Because I'll be honest with you, I haven't read the Dune novels at all. I've only seen the film, but I just thought the Butlerian Jihad concept was amazing. I just thought that's it. Because for me, it's pretty obvious that all of this AI technology is not good for us. It's leading us down a garden path, basically. And it's, it might on the surface appear like it's doing good things for us, but ultimately it's not. Is it really? So yeah.
Do you know that there's actually a thing called thinking machines? Have I told you about this?
No.
All right. So this is the Thinking Machines Corporation, right? And right here. And of course, it was founded in Waltham, Massachusetts. It's a supercomputer and artificial intelligence, founded in Waltham, Massachusetts, which is where my sister lives now, in 1983 by Cheryl Handler. Okay. And it basically, they eventually sold it to Sun Microsystems, which later was acquired by Oracle, which is right next door to where I live right here, and also on Butler Trail.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And thinking machines, I found out about, and she just rolled right over it, but I actually found out about it from a Whitney Webb video where she was talking about thinking machines, supercomputers being at nuclear sites, and that Jeffrey Epstein had some connection to this, right? So Thinking Machines is a pure data mining company. It was a pure data mining company until it was acquired in 1999 by Oracle Corporation, right? Oracle later also acquired Sun Microsystems, which reunited much of Thinking Machines' intellectual property. Now, the intellectual property, from what I've been able to understand, though it doesn't say it here, is basically keeping track of like health records. It's the genetic computers, right? They talk about parallel supercomputers, which is an interesting idea, right? But to me, why would they have these supercomputers at nuclear locations, right? Other than if these are tracking the people's genetics and whatnot, right? Now, there was something that you said when you described the Butlerian Jihad that made me think about the whole, which people were going to be killed, which people were going to be slaves, all of that kind of stuff, right? Like having and that goes to what we would hear about the genetic supercomputers by IBM and the Nazi fairy tale and all of that kind of stuff, right? So this is something about there's an awful lot of data right? And what they collect data on generally is people. And if you look into Sun Microsystems, that is about collecting health information on people, right? And they even have something called a VAX mini computer. Look at that. It's spelled VAX. They have something called a fat-free computer now. Look at some of the language about some of these things. Saw one down here called Ascent, like Ascension. There's one called Incube, right?
Gray.
There's all these interesting names for their products. Rosetta Project, like the Rosetta Stone, right? This is something different than just some, this is something quite fantastic, right?
So in the yeah, go on.
In the 1993 film Jurassic Park, connection machines are visible in the park's control room. Programmer Dennis Nedry mentions 8 connection machines, and a video about dinosaur cloning mentions thinking machines, supercomputers. So cloning, genetic material.
Yeah.
Okay, so these are actual thinking machines, right? And they're located right here on Butler Trail. Okay. Now I want to take you all of the commentary I have offered about Austin, from like the buildings to power spots, things about the lake and the river, all on Butler Trail. So if you look, just when you type in Butler Trail, you see this phenomenon that I'm obsessed with of the purple crown and the reflective reality upside down, the mirroring of the downtown Austin, right? Like you see, this is the running trail that I go on. Sometimes it's on natural land, and sometimes it's on this trail that they built out over the water. So you're running on over the mirror to a certain extent, right? And you can see this from above. This is what the trail looks like as it winds through, right?
It's very for people just listening to this. It's very spectacular, man. That looks like a great place to live, Emily, I must say.
It is a great place to live, right? This is like, there's areas where you're running on dirt, right? So it's not all on a suspended bridge, right? This is the Lamar Street walking bridge, right? This is, this is another angle on the Lamar Street walking bridge. So all of the commentary I've offered about Austin. So this is where the plaque for the Butler Trail is, which is near this little interesting sort of item right here, which looks at a lot of these buildings that I've offered commentary on. I'm trying to see if there's anything else that I can show that would be like an interesting perspective, because this is a top-down picture of a part of it, right? So, and this is also the trail from which you would be able to see that Austin is also all of these other cities. Like I said, Champs-Élysées, Golden Gate Bridge, Giza Plateau, right? All of that kind of stuff is visible at this location. So, I'm wondering if the Butlerian Jihad is where we overthrow the thinking machines. Right, all here. I mean, right? Like they just do it right there in plain sight.
Yeah.
And in Dune,
yeah.
There's all these surreal, there's a couple iterations of Dune, but there's all these surreal pictures of the sun in the sky that actually quite match this idea of the violet crown. Like, look at some of these pictures that I show. Like, here's some just that are here. Remember, like the pink and orange sky from Dune?
Yeah.
Right? Look at this. I have some more fantastic pictures that I've shown, just that I've taken, that I've used in various episodes with Michael and other people or whatnot. So like, maybe this is the actual physical anchor point for thinking machines in the Butlerian Jihad. And I think, like, for me, this is a fantastic place to live. And there's a true alchemical, metaphysical, spiritual magic to this location that allows what you're talking about when you say the return to psychedelic, or the return to like this more organic way of moving through the various iterations of reality. And then there is something here trying to replicate that technologically. And it's an overlay.
So you've basically got to start the Butlerian Jihad, is what we're coming the conclusion is you have to start it, Emily.
I mean, I think that that's the only thing I couldn't. I mean, the synchronicity of us sort of ending a little bit talking about that last time, and then me going out there and recognizing this thing that was in plain sight and wondering. You want to know what's fucking crazy, Les? I was doing a show with Elisa the other day.
Yeah.
I think this one is out already. We were talking about her time living in Tucson and my time there, where I River Road, where I lived in Tucson. Check this out: River Road and Stone, Tucson. When I was living in Tucson, Arizona in the mid 90s, this is it's impossible. Like, it seems like it would be impossible. Let's see if I can find the actual thing I'm looking for here. All right. Campbell. How is this working? Where's River and Stone? I can't find what I'm looking for here. Okay, there's Swan, there's Alvernon, Dodge. Let me just find. I'm looking for it. River and Stone, Tucson. Please take me to the right spot. It keeps wanting to take me to this other thing. All right, I can't find it now. The way we pulled it up in the show, it keeps taking me to this other location. Let me just see if I can find a Tucson map. Tucson map. Okay, here we go. Let's see. That when I was living in Tucson, I was living on River Road. Right now, I live on Riverside, right near the river. And there was Oracle right next to me there in Tucson too. Like, it's called Oracle area. When I didn't know that. Like, I hadn't made the connection. It's like everywhere I go, I have to be near Oracle or something like that, right? Let me see if I can find it. I didn't even know there was a river that went through Tucson. I was so brain dead when I was living there that I right, like I was just completely, in a different stage of my life now, right? So let me see if I can find exactly where I was living. Where's the goddamn Tucson Mall? Okay, I think where is everything? Okay, for some reason I went right to it last time with her. And accidentally, it wasn't even intentional. So here's River Road, where I was kind of, look at this right here. Look at this. Okay, so this is River and Stone. This is where I live. See Stone here? Where it says Am5 Stone and River Road. This is exactly where I lived, and look at what's right above me. Okay, now look at where I live right now. Okay, so this is where I live right now.
Well, I will say, at least Austin is not such a grid system.
Well, Austin is so windy, right?
Yeah,
so
that's good. That's good. Like,
okay, so this is where I live right now. See where it says Peace Point? Look what's right above me, right below me, the reflection.
Yeah, now this is very kind of I don't know, matrixy, isn't it? Like, wherever you go, you're in the same sort of same pinpoints are around you.
In the other one, I was north of the river and Oracle was above me. And in Austin, I'm south of the river and Oracle is below me. So it's the mirror. It's the reverse universe.
You're going back through time now.
Yeah, or whatever it is. I mean, and I used to live here. Remember? Like, I used to live here and I didn't recognize a lot of the things about Austin then. And I could recognize them now, but it's like, yeah, like it's almost like I'm living this process that we're describing. And like, I sit there and I'm like, what is going on at Oracle over there? There is nobody there. It's empty. But it doesn't, I think the building is the computer. I think the building is the thinking machine. Right? I don't know if you saw when I kind of scanned over it, what the building, I'm just going to pull up separate pictures of Oracle for you.
Just a side note, what's Pleasant Valley?
Pleasant Valley is a road, but I've noticed that like a lot of the places that I look at on maps when I'm talking to people doing synchromysticism, all of those cities have pleasant valleys as well. So I'm just going to show you some of these pictures of this building that is Oracle here in Austin.
because it's almost like the you know, in Dark City, that beach place, you know, Pleasantville or whatever, where it's the happy place
Yeah.
that you just do, you know, in the fake world you go to the happy place. So this, we're looking at Oracle now.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow.
Right. And like it looks.
Can you ring them up and have like a tour? Is that a thing you can do?
I mean, I try. We thought about walking in before, but there's nobody there. It's like it's empty, right? Look at it. Look at this. It's like different streams of information all flowing into one cohesive, right? Like, let's say these are. Look at these. Look at these as like, okay, there's 5 levels, 5 white stripes, and they break down into 4 here, and each of them are made up of like what looks like little genetic kind of marker PCR test strips. Right. And remember, Oracle's keeping track of the database for the reactions and stuff. And then it all becomes one thing. See how that is?
Yeah.
Like these buildings don't just mean nothing the way they look.
Can you Google Cyberdyne Systems building?
How do you spell
I'm talking about,
Cyberdyne?
cyber.
Oh, cyber. Okay. Cyberdyne Systems
Building. Maybe T2 or something. You know, remember the Terminator film?
Okay.
It's where the, you know, is it kind of similar?
Oh yeah.
This is the fictional building from Terminator 2 where they got the technology to build the microchips that, you know.
It's the same. Look at this. There's another there's a different Oracle location that looks just like that. Look.
Yeah. I don't know if you're familiar with have you seen Terminator 1 and 2?
I know that I've seen the one that has Linda Hamilton with the muscles. Where the opening scene is her doing pull-ups in the jail cell. I've seen that one. That's it.
Yeah, that's T2. So that's that one. So in that storyline, it's Skynet. Skynet takes over. Skynet becomes self-aware. So
right.
Skynet is like a military AI system. And the second they flick it on, it just annihilates everyone and just sends nukes everywhere. You know, it just, the first thing it does is tries to get rid of humans.
There's literally a netting in the sky here. There is a net in the sky here. And there's even somebody, a graffiti artist, who's commented on it, and it points in one direction and says baby sky, and the other direction says king sky. Right. And you can see that like on certain kinds of days, there's this mist or this like webbing over the city in one part.
Wow. The MI5's or the British Intelligence Service's satellite system is called Skynet, and I'm pretty sure that Starlink is just Skynet, is British Intelligence Service's communications in disguise. They're just selling Skynet to people under the the Potemkin Starlink system. Like, we're going to give you great internet, but really you're just sticking up Skynet everywhere. And if you look at, I've looked into like the British Space Command's like picture of the future, and it's literally just, something out of a science fiction film with just a satellite practically creating a Dyson sphere around the Earth. So we're going deeper and deeper into the thinking machine world, and we need our Butler and Jihad pretty soon, because what it did was, it took over the medical system, and it was convincing people to have abortions and things like that, convincing them they were sick when they were not, convincing them to not, and through culture, convincing them not to have kids. And going after the last 3 years we've just been through, isn't that kind of what the scamdemic was about? Convincing people they were sick when they weren't. ChickenFeed, it all ties in. To me,
getting people to give up their genetic material.
Yeah. To me, the culprit, the bad guy, is the black cube, which is probably the machine.
The thinking machines. Let me show you the thing back to that thinking machines thing. Look at what they look like. This is what they look like. Liz.
Black cube, yeah. There's a black cube right there.
Right. Look at the they have a poster advertising thinking machines at the Cryptologic Museum. Oh, this is interesting. Stephen Wolfram is mentioned here, and Stephen Wolfram came up in the show last night. Danny and I were on the Melt last night, and this guy is one of the people who developed SFI, Santa Fe Institute, right? And he had this article that I still have pulled up, I think. Do I still have it pulled? Let me see if I can find the Stephen Wolfram hold on a second. Let me see if I can show you what I'm talking about. Stephen. Okay, hold on a second. Stephen Wolfram. I'm the worst typer. Santa Fe Institute. Let's see if I can find the article that yep, right here. My part in the origin story of launching Santa Fe Institute. And we were showing them because there is this seating chart of the original meeting, right? And the people who are there include Nick Metropolis, right? Who was very much part of the Maniac program and cybernetics and all of that kind of stuff, right? But that's interesting that I found him on the Thinking Machines page too.
How many, can we just go back to that little scribble?
Yep.
How many people are there?
One,
If it's 20, if it's the 20 committee.
7, 8, 9, 10. No, it's more than 20. 11, 12, 13,
Okay.
14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30.
Oh, I'm surprised I'm on 33. But I think the 20 committee, which is another name for the double cross, the 20 committee, yeah, XX, 10 and 10,
Yeah.
are a bunch of vampires that are obviously working for the Black Cube, and they keep coming back around in different formations, like Benjamin Franklin and William Shakespeare and this guy and that guy. They're just eternal beings that keep coming back as Elon Musk and Trump. They just keep putting on different masks, and they're just working for the Black Cube. They're in cahoots with the Black Cube and doing whatever the Black Cube God tells them to do.
I'm going to put this article in the chat here so you can open it and read it when you have a minute, because I think you'll find what it talks about to be quite interesting. And Santa Fe Institute has been the focus a lot of what Danny and I look into, right? It's like much lesser known than your Tavistock and your Rand and your Brookings and Aspen and all that kind of institute and whatever. But yeah, but that's interesting that there was that crossover there. So the Thinking Machine, so Dune is a documentary. And we're going in reverse time. So I guess it's all just waiting for me to lead the Butlerian Jihad. I don't have a daughter. Maybe I do, and I just don't know. But it does feel to me like the people talk about the battle for the soul of Austin that's going on here, and that the battle is taking place on opposite sides of the river. Like south of the river is like people who want to keep Austin weird, and north of the river is people who are into this, like packing as many things as you can onto a city block and whatever. But like, maybe maybe there's some truth to this, right? And that this is part of why I was sort of called back here at this time. And this city does feel magical to me. It feels like there is a rhythm I'm able to get into with this place that I can't get into in the same way anywhere else. Almost like I understand the song this city is trying to sing, or or whatever it is, right? And there's an overlay being built on top of the same thing that I've recognized about it. And part of that overlay is being built by Elon Musk, right? Who, like, it's been pointed out to me a number of times by people over the years, even before I was back here or talking about these things, that like astrologically we're a little bit similar. Right. And his penthouse is on my portal. Right. And so we're not born in the same year. There's obvious differences and whatever. Right. But like for everything, there's like that real version. And then there's the synthetic or the copy or the clone or the simulation version, or there may be many iterations or whatever. But I think and then there's the place where those two things kind of meet, right? There's like that augmentation, or like the crossing over, the purple zone, right? There's the red, there's the blue, and there's the purple. And the river seems to be important in that. If you look at, we're reading this book right now by Goro Adachi called The Time Rivers, which is quite interesting. And then even that, like, he has some wacky ideas about a lot of shit. But like when Michael and I talked to that guy, Rico Rojo, he was talking about like water, how important clean water is, and the pollution of our water systems, and especially our rivers and whatnot, are representative of the pollution of information streams and minds and all of that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
So
Well, I'm team Mother Earth, so the
me too.
river is what gives us life. Like if we didn't have rivers, we'd have to go live by the sea. We wouldn't have a choice. So rivers give us life in every form. So the fact that we're given rivers to survive and that they're trying to kill the river by poisoning it or whatever, it's the war of, we're fighting over rivers here.
Did you ever see
talking
the movie? Did you ever see the movie called A River Runs Through It?
The name sounds familiar.
I saw it when I was like a teenager. Let's remind myself what the plot of the movie was. It was one of Brad Pitt's early movies. It was very good, but I don't remember exactly what the plot was. Let's see. Set in and around Missoula, Montana, the story follows two sons of a Presbyterian minister, one studious and the other rebellious, as they grow up and come of age in the Rocky Mountain region during a span of time from roughly World War I to the early days of the Great Depression, including the Prohibition era.
Sounds pretty good. It sounds pretty good. It's a classic kind of Brad Pitt film where he's
Yeah,
going through the ages.
Who's in it? Joseph Gordon-Levitt, who's in a lot of these movies that we talk about.
Yeah. Looper, Inception, Dark Knight Rises.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, talking of the Mel, before I was chatting to you, I listened to a good episode of The Obelisk with Nish and Jerry Cthulhu talking to the guys from the Mel. Hunter and Chris.
Yep.
And anyway, great. It was a great episode, but they were getting into the whole problem of culture and how young men and women are lost. And anyway, it was all down to like Instagram, dating apps. Their lives are being ruined. These guys have got 1 billion followers and they're getting their buttholes out on social media, but they can't, boil an egg or make some toast. They haven't got simple skills. But this is it. This is the thinking machines taking over. They're not going to like come down the street like in the Hollywood version. Maybe they will at some point. But in the Terminator, they're sending big tanks down the street, killing everyone. They don't need to. They've got everyone via hypnosis and via attention, and we're all just looking down at our black cube idolatry we have in front of us here, which is the new religion. And I'm pretty sure that every like Christian, Muslim, Jew, atheist, whatever is worshipping the black cube more than they are their other things. Worship, and when I say worship, I mean giving attention to it via time and energy. So I know a lot of people don't agree with me on this, but I think the machines have got to go. I'm not scared of that. I think as well, once the machines go and we're back to taking mushrooms and that, we'll still be able to communicate across dimensions probably a lot better. We can probably astral project ourselves next to each other and so on.
Yeah, no, I mean, I like the thing that I'm kind of I'm with you, but under this circumstance, if they're going to go, they kind of all have to go, because I think it would be much more difficult to live like in like a halfway point, right? Where like it still existed, but we didn't have access to them all the time, or we've got a more primitive version of it, right? Particularly in the digital realm. I suppose there could be a case made for returning to things all analog, and therefore we have record players and the kinds of music we like and all that kind of stuff, right? So maybe it's just but in terms of like, I don't think it would be helpful if we didn't have a cell phone, but we still had our computers that do all the same things that they do now, right? Like I think people would just never leave their house then, right?
No, yeah, it's like Dune. Every ounce of it has to be removed from the universe, and you shall not make machine in the likeness of man ever again. So yeah, you can't have one little thing, because then it brings it all back. That's how it starts again, doesn't it? We're in a cycle.
What are your thoughts about analog technologies?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
It's not technology. It's thinking machine. It's AI. It's
right. It's things designed, things that are biomimicry of the human being.
Yeah. Well, also what happens is like in Dune, like everyone, special abilities start appearing. You have like these people called the Mentats, who are like human calculators. So you don't need a AI because you have a human calculator who can just, do this weird thing with his eyes and calculate everything right there. You've got humans can do this stuff.
Yeah.
You've also got the spacing guild, which are beings that take psychedelics and can get themselves navigate through space on psychedelics. That's the only way to navigate through space is you have to hand the controls of the ship over to someone on psychedelics, which is what they call the spice in the Dune world.
So that, I mean, that's exactly the stuff that Kalindi talks about.
Funnily enough, right?
Yeah.
He's like a bit of a mentor to you, right? Even though you haven't met him, he's like a inspirational character to you. I've got a similar guy, like, do you know Patrice O'Neill?
I love Patrice O'Neill.
He's like my hero, and to me, they're both the same kind of like, just really cool black guy that just tells it how it is. I don't know. It's weird, isn't it? Like,
yeah, he's
similar
got.
kind of guy.
They're both dead. They both died around the same time. I mean, they both died within a couple of years of each other.
Yeah. But like Patrice O'Neill, man, like one of my heroes, I'd say.
Yeah, no, he's great. Yeah, just so everybody knows, Patrice O'Neill is a comedian, and you can find some of his stuff if you go look for it.
Yeah.
All right, my brain is fried.
Okay.
I've reached the tipping point because I've been doing this multiple times a day, every day for the last forever. I'm taking a little break next week, so that'll be nice. I'm going.
Yeah.
All right, so this will come out sooner than it normally does. Probably not till next week or something like that, but not the long wait that it was last. I had so many shows in the can, and I look forward to doing this with you again next month. All the threads are, starting to really come together, and I feel like we're getting an interesting picture of where things are at. I'm going to see if I can figure out a little bit more about that thing. This is the second time in a show that the Scottish Rite Freemason Theater has come up. It came up with someone else about something else before. So I'm going to have to go figure out where that is and take a look and see what's going on there.
Yeah. Awesome.
All right, guys, that wraps it up for us. Go check. Well, you've been making the round. I heard you were on Freeman. So it seems like you're getting out there a little bit, pissing off more people. It's good.
Yeah. I'll tell you. Yeah. I'm still around. I mean, the date of June 21st is my 2-year anniversary when I said I would quit. I said I would do a 2-year tour of duty on Twitter and then quit. And I still feel like that. I think I've done as much as I can do. I can keep going to practice the same thing. I'm proving my point again and again. It's a very engineered and staged reality we live in.
Well, hopefully then we can continue having these conversations, not about that, but about these deeper ideas that, you won't be able to find them on Twitter, but you'll still be able to find them here with me.
Hey, it seems like looking at the comments, people like what we chat about. I thought people were sick of me just saying chicken feed about everything, but apparently not. I guess we give people a good conversation. So yeah, man, as long as people still enjoy it, and we still enjoy it.
That's all I really care about, is that we still enjoy it. So I love the people, but I enjoy talking to you. So I would do it whether they enjoyed it or not, and that they enjoy it is a bonus, right? So
yeah.
Anywho, all right, guys, that's it for us. We will see you next month, or you will hear us next month. Take care, guys.